They called him a bandit. But for his people, he was justice. Sentenced to death, escaped from the penal colony of French Guiana, and hunted across colonial Kabylia. This is the story of Ahmed Saïd, known as Abdoun, the Kabyle bandit of honor. In the late 19th century, Kabylia was a land under immense pressure. French colonization was tightening its grip. The people faced systematic land dispossession. Their ancestral forests were restricted, and they were crushed under the weight of new, heavy taxes. The traditional social structures that had governed life for centuries began to collapse under this strain. In this climate of injustice and desperation, a new figure emerged: the bandit of honor. For the colonial administration, they were outlaws, criminals to be hunted down. But for the local villagers, they were symbols of resistance, a form of social justice in a world turned upside down. It was from this deep fracture in society that Ahmed Said Abdoun was born. So, who was this man? Ahmed Said was born in 1844 in the village of Agraraj, part of the Ait Jenad tribe. He came from a respected marabout family, a lineage of spiritual leaders. He was a farmer, a man deeply connected to his land and his community. His life took a dramatic turn in 1884 when he was accused of killing a local colonial assistant. The trial that followed was highly controversial, many believing the charges were fabricated to make an example of him. He was sentenced to death. However, his sentence was later commuted to a life of forced labor, a fate that would send him to the other side of the world. He was deported to the infamous penal colony of French Guiana, a place known as a colonial hell. It was a one-way ticket to a slow death, a world of rampant disease, brutal violence, and complete despair. But Abdoun was not a man to surrender to his fate. On October 11, 1886, he achieved the impossible. He escaped. His journey back home was nothing short of unbelievable. He crossed the Atlantic, worked on the chaotic construction sites of the Panama Canal, somehow made his way back to Europe, and then, against all odds, returned to his homeland of Kabylia. It was an extraordinary odyssey that forged an even stronger resolve within him. Back in the mountains of Kabylia, Abdoun was no longer just a farmer. He was a legend, a man who had stared into the abyss and returned. He formed a band of insurgents, which included his brother, Mohammed Ben El-Hajj Ammar. They didn't engage in random violence. Their actions were targeted, aimed at the symbols and collaborators of the colonial system that had stolen their land and their dignity. He quickly gained the tacit support of the rural population. They saw him not as a criminal, but as a protector, a symbol of social resistance. French authorities described him as a serious threat to the colonial order, and launched major repression campaigns in 1892, 1893, and 1894, desperately trying to crush his rebellion. But the net was closing in. After a massive manhunt that mobilized significant colonial forces, Abdoun was finally captured. He was brought to trial and, for the second time in his life, sentenced to death. On May 14, 1895, in the town of Amazigh, Ahmed Said Abdoun was executed. He was not alone. Alongside him were his famous companion in arms, Arezki El Bachir, and 5 other companions. The execution was a public spectacle, attended by a large crowd of European settlers. For the colonial administration, this was a moment of triumph. They wanted to make an example of Abdoun, to show the Kabyle people that resistance was futile and would end only in death. So, was he a bandit or a popular hero? The answer depends entirely on who you ask. For the colonial administration, the records are clear. He was a criminal, a murderer, a disturber of the peace. But for the villagers who sheltered him, fed him, and saw him as their champion, he represented something else entirely. He was a form of parallel justice in a world where official justice was corrupt. He embodied dignity in the face of humiliation. He was resistance personified. The figure of the bandit of honor is complex, born directly from the injustice and dispossession of the colonial system. Ahmed Said Abdoun did not write books. He did not rule a state. But he embodied a powerful, popular resistance, the resistance of those often forgotten by official colonial history. A bandit to some, a man of honor to others, his story reveals the deep wounds of an era. and the unyielding spirit of a people fighting for their dignity. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more hidden histories.